on the customer value proposition. So I'll just give you a quick recap before we go into the rest of the details. Okay. So when we're looking at B2B, we're looking at the buyer-seller relationship to be very important. Here, the buyer is an organization. So an organization that is going to buy because they want to manufacture a final commodity and they want to sell to the market. And here the seller is the supplier that we're talking about, who is going to be the supplier of raw materials and various other input factors that are going to be bought by the large organization. That could be in manufacturing, that could be in assembling, that could be in any kind of B2B kind of a business. Now here what happens is in a B2B market, in a B2B transaction, as we say, uh, the buyer is very keen on trying to establish a relationship with the supplier with whom they could do long-term business, right? And every component that they buy is very important for the manufacturing firm, because every component that is going to go into the product, we call these as entering goods, right? So the entering goods that's going to go into making into that final commodity that the firm is going to manufacture and then finally sell to an ultimate consumer. Every important component, every asset or every machine or every equipment, it could be a small nut and a bolt that will also be going into the final commodity, makes a lot of difference, right? So that is the reason why it's very important for the sellers to be able to offer a certain value to the customer, right? And the suppliers, as we say, are very large in number. They are large in number, and they're always looking at targeting some of the best manufacturing organizations or manufacturing firms to whom they would want to sell and establish a long-term relationship. So, how do you create this customer value proposition is very important, because the way you position what you have as a supplier or as a vendor to the organization is very important. Okay, so that is the context in which we were discussing, this aspect. So that's where we were talking about three things, right? So when you look at trying to position yourself, there are three things that's very important. One is you need to know about the company or the organization to whom you are selling. You must know everything about the nature of their business. So that's very important. Nature of their business, the industry that they are in, the kind of product and service that they are manufacturing, that's very important. And then also be able to know the competitor, right? So you should know who are the competitors who are very similar to to the firm that is manufacturing a good. And then you must also equally know your competitors in the supply market. Who are the suppliers who are closely trying to compete with you and who are targeting the same manufacturing firm that you are targeting? It's very important. And the third aspect, you should be able to know the product that the firm is making right now and the kind of potential plans that they have for the future, that they would want to manufacture goods and that they would want to sell. So basically you have to do a 3C homework: company, competitor, customer, and then get to understand the crux of what they do, and then be able to define and design a customer value proposition. And when you offer or position this CVP before your firm should be in a good position to accept it, because they know that it's a fantastic offering compared to what anybody else is offering. So that is where we look at the CVP becoming very important. So here you can't become a very good supplier, to a manufacturing firm unless and until you have very good resources. You need to have skills. You must have good capabilities, and you must be able to understand the business needs of the company. So you must understand. So the buyer, as we look at, is very important. The buyer is the manufacturing firm, right? And the firm is very keen on trying to buy any component that they want to buy from any suppliers as such, because every component is going to go into that final commodity. It's going to be that entering good that is going to become that final commodity that's going to be sold into the market. So everything that they are going to buy will have to be of a best quality, so that it lasts very well and good when it is sold into the market. And then later on, when ultimate final consumers are using the commodity, they must not have any complaints, they must not have any issues, and they must not be able to come back with a negative feedback to the company. So that is why firms are very careful about who they select. That's why when you look at the organizational buying process, one particular stage that we emphasize a lot and take a lot of time to assess and analyze is the vendor analysis, because vendors are plenty. There are so many suppliers who claim to be the best, and they may be claiming to say that they have been serving to these many big clients, top-notch clients, and they may also be trying to claim that they've been in business for these many years. But all that ultimately is going to be decided only when you serve the final commodity, you sell the final commodity, and the final commodity must not have any sort of an issue with which the firm is going to make a product. So that's very important. So the vendor analysis is where the CVP is going to be put forth. And then we are going to be looking at maybe 10 to 15 different vendors and taking proposals from each one of them, looking at demonstrations that they have to make, looking at product samples that they are offering to us. And then finally, the company goes on to decide. So it's a very important decision, because once you make a decision, you cannot go back on it, because it's taken a lot of time and effort of many people who were part of the purchase decision. So what is a CVP? You must understand this, because everything else that we're going to talk about in the later on slides, as well as in the next part of the topic on relationship management, everything depends on your good understanding of the CVP. So customer value proposition, as we said, captures the particular set of benefits that a supplier offers to advance the performance of the customer organization. Okay, so here the supplier is not just trying to supply a certain component that a buyer or a buying organization wants. They want to ensure that the supplier plays a very important or a very prime role in helping the business organization to further its business growth goals and objectives, and also be able to sell their products well into the market. And more importantly, they want to be included in that list of the finest vendors or suppliers that the organization has, so that they could continue a long-lasting relationship. So you must remember this point here. For suppliers, every organization is not a one-time kind of an organization, and every purchase transaction is not a one-time purchase transaction like how it happens in a B2C market. In a B2B market, the product manufacturing is a recurring process. It's a continuous process. Goods are going to be, raw materials are going to be purchased, raw materials are going to be converted into finished commodities, finished commodities are going to be supplied through the supply chain, and it's going to be bought by customers. And then again, you will have the same customers coming back again, or you have different set of customers coming back again, and then purchasing. So the production cycle, is continuous. It's a recurring, and it goes on. So once you have identified a supplier and you've established a supply relationship, right? Once you've established a supply relationship and the supplier is supplying these components and goods, then it becomes adequate enough for the supplier, for the buyer to decide that these suppliers are trustworthy enough, and then we can continue a relationship. So that is where making that good impression and trying to offer that real benefit, and then trying to ensure that you are better than any of the other vendors or suppliers in the market is a very, very important aspect as such. So best supply practices, best practice suppliers base their value proposition on a few elements that matter most to them. One is on the target customers, and they identify what is the superior value that they can offer. Who are the target customers? Which is the business that I am trying to target? That's one thing. Secondly, what is that I'm offering? And third is, how better am I offering to this particular business in comparison to rest of the other suppliers who are there in the market. So when we do this, we look at two things. So as a supplier, when we are supplying, right? And as a manufacturing organization or that buying organization, we look at two things, right? So when you build your CVP as a supplier, there are two things that you need to look at. One is to look for point of parity. So when we are doing vendor analysis, a buyer organization, a buying organization, when it does vendor analysis, it has a set of listed criteria, right? And most of these are technical criteria on the basis of which we would want to analyze, right? Analyze the components or supplies that the suppliers are offering, so that we could make an analysis or an evaluation based on the alternatives that the various suppliers are putting forth. Point of parity will talk about, the qualities in a product or the features of the component supply that are very similar to what other vendors are offering, right? And the point of difference is, what is that is different than what others are offering. One is, I need to look for criteria that is there. If you are a supplier who's proposing to supply to this organization. So the firm would like to see whether you have the same features that other vendors are also pitching forth and proposing to the organization, so that we could select them as the right vendor for our transaction. Point of difference is, what is that you have something that's superior, something that is differentiated than rest of the other vendors in the market. So here companies can make a point saying that we would like to have 4 points of parity, and then we would like to have 1 or 2 points of difference. So 4 points of parity is something that all vendors have, and 2 points of difference is what is the differentiator that is very different than what other vendors are having or offering to the organization right now. So that is how companies look at the CVP. So you can actually build your CVP, like very similar to in the B2B in the B2C market. When we talk about a unique selling proposition, one of the things that buyers would want to ask, or one of the questions that a customer definitely puts forth before a seller is, what is your USP, or what makes you different from rest of the others? So when we are able to see a lot of point of parity, so the customer often tells the seller that you have the same thing that others are offering. So why should I prefer to buy from you? Or what makes you a lot more different than the other vendors? So that's where when you are building your CVP, you need to ensure that there are certain points that are different than rest of the others. So that those differentiated points are the points that you can always pitch before a buyer and convince the buying organization and say, this is what makes us different. This is what we have, which no other firm has. That is called a point of difference. So you must not just trying to match and ensure that you have only points of parity, because when you have points of parity, you are like a Me Too kind of a company, which means there is no difference between you or rest of the other vendors who are trying to target and supply to the organization. So only when you have more points of difference, so that's what is going to make your firm a lot more different than the rest of the others. So you need to work on this if you want to build your CVP. So this is an example that I gave you about this company called Sonoco. When they pitched before a European customer, for packaging requirements. So the company got back to them and said, we would like to have 1 point of parity and 2 points of difference in customer value proposition. So that's what the Sonoco executives decided. And they said, we would like to have 1 point of parity. We would like to have one aspect or one criteria that is very similar to what the others are offering. And then we would like to have 2 points of difference, which is something that you have, which others don't have. So you need to have that in your CVP. So they said the redesigned packaging will deliver significantly greater manufacturing efficiency in the customer fill lines, which means the packaging should be done or designed in such a manner that it's going to help us to increase the quantity that we're going to manufacture through the production lines. That's one thing. And the second aspect that they said was that it must be distinctive enough in color and in outlook, that it must be that the customers should be able to identify that very easily when it is kept on the racks for selling, so that it's very appealing and it's also easily identifiable. So there were two things that we're looking at. One is, in terms of the requirement that they had, which they were looking for in the CVP, was to ensure that it offers certain production efficiencies, right? And on the other end, they were also looking at trying to make sure that the packaging and the product that goes with that packaging will be appealing enough to the customer. So that's how companies can build their CVP and make a very good proposal for when they are pitching before buying organizations. And buying organizations will also list their criteria. What is the criteria on the basis of which you're going to select a vendor? And there again, they will have how many points of parity and how many points of differences are to be considered when they go in for that phase of doing vendor analysis to shortlist a vendor and then finally, select a vendor and give them the order. So this is an example that I was giving you on Sonoco. So that's where the CVP becomes extremely important, because the CVP is the driving force, right? The driving force, and then the CVP must include everything that the buying organization is looking for, when they have to select a vendor and then also purchase the supplies from them. Okay, so going further, so these are the various industries. This is the industry classification in our country. So these are the various industries that operate the economy. And then each of these industries will have several firms that compete with each other, as you all understand. So this is an industry, and an industry will comprise of various firms that are closely competitive to each other, and they will be manufacturing goods that are very similar to what each of them offer or manufacture and offer in that particular industry. And there's a lot of competition. So that's what we understand as rivalry within the industry. So if there are many suppliers, so suppliers of a particular component, machine, or a raw material, or an input factor, or any sort of a resource that is required. It could be a foundation asset, or it could be an entering good, right? Or it could be a facilitation good. So you could be a supplier of anything, a supplier of an entry good, a supplier of a foundation good, or a supplier of a facilitation good. You could be anybody. So when you are looking which are the type of firms to whom I need to sell, you are going to zero in on industries. Which are the industries, and what is the kind of products that they manufacture, and what is their requirement, and based on that requirement you target, right? So you target and say, okay, these industries require, the firms in these industries will require the machinery or the equipment or the component that we are offering. So suppliers will try to target the various firms that are there in the industry. Okay, and as I said, firms in the industry are trying to compete with each other. So when they want to compete, they want to compete on price, they want to compete on product, they want to compete on quality, they want to compete in terms of technical efficiency. So there are various factors that you list out as your USP when you are competing in your industry. So that's what makes you a lot more different, and that's what is going to ensure that you bring in more customers and add more customers to your market base, right? That's on one thing. So when a firm in the industry is very keen on trying to increase its progress, increase its growth, increase its profitability, increase its customer share, they definitely can do that only when they are supplying very high quality goods at affordable prices, which means they make value oriented goods for customers that satisfy their requirements and needs. In doing so, all this is possible. You can make a high quality product at an affordable price and target maximum number of customers, and then have more maximum number of customers coming and purchasing from you only when you have identified very dependable, reliable, and trustworthy suppliers. Suppliers who supply high quality components at very affordable prices. That helps the manufacturing firm also to be able to manufacture and produce final commodities, and then be able to offer that to the customer. So there is a lot of competition. So as I said, so there are more suppliers, and they identify which are the industries and which are the firms in that industry that we need to target, and they automatically will start making their proposals. They formulate their CVPs, and then they will start targeting the various manufacturing firms within this industry. So what are the characteristics of a B2B buying? So again, going back to that essential dimension, right? So we were speaking about the key differences between the B2B and the B2C. So here the manufacturing organization, so the buying organization has a set of criteria, and has a set, and their industry itself operates on a certain set of dynamics. So they need to understand their industry dynamics. They need to understand the sense of competition, the extent of competition within the industry, and they need to understand, what kind of commodities are required by firms that are manufacturing, final commodities, or they need to identify what is the requirement of final customers in the market, and accordingly they need to firm up. They need to formulate the criterias on the basis of which they need to go and target, right? So we need to go back and understand, what are the key characteristics that define the B2B buy. So what is the buying organization's mindset, and what is that they are looking for in a supplier if they have to identify a supplier and then select a supplier and say that this is a supplier with whom we'd want to do business for a long term. Okay, so let's look at each one of it, and I'm going to ask you questions, here and there, because all these are something that we have done, in the beginning itself. So when we look at market characteristics, so the demand for industrial products and services is derived. And the second market characteristic is few customers typically exist and their purchase orders are large. Okay, so those are the two market characteristics that defines the B2B buying. Okay, so let me ask somebody to explain the first 2 points. Okay, Eben Benny. Eben, can you hear me? Eben Benny is not in class. Okay, Jade. Jade, can you hear me? Okay, Jade 2 is not in class. Okay. Lijo?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Lijo, can you explain those first 2 points? We said market characteristics. Okay, we said demand for industrial products and services are derived. And then there are few customers who typically exist and their purchase orders are large. So what do we understand? What do you understand by that?
The based on the market characteristics, the demand is increased.
Okay, we say the industrial products operate on derived demand. What does that mean?
Um, mm,
Market characteristics is derived
that's
demand. Yeah.
yeah. So if the customer needs more products, so that ultimately leads to increase in production. So therefore, the industry needs like more machinery to fulfill the uh, satisfaction of the customer.
No, it's not as complex as your answer. It's a lot more simple. Richo?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rijo, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rijo. Can you explain the market characteristics? Demand for industrial products and services is derived, and then there are few
Yes, sir.
customers.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's highly customizable according to client's need.
No, we're not talking about customization here. We're talking about derived demand. What does derived demand mean?
So there's already demand in the market.
Okay, anybody else who can give me an answer for that?
So it's like when there is a demand for B, there is an increase in A also.
Absolutely.
Like when there is an increase in disposable income.
Okay, so we said one of the primary, yeah, that's the right answer. Yeah. So one of the primary characteristics of the B2B business or the B2B buying is it operates on derived demand. I said the demand for steel will go up only when the demand for cars go up. The demand for cars will go up only when the disposable income of people in society, the B2C market, where people's income rise and more people are wanting to buy. Right? That's why I was giving you those examples of a pre-COVID scenario and a post-COVID scenario, and I was telling you from October onwards, business was speaking up. So it operates on derived demand. The demand for steel cannot sell, a steel supplier cannot supply to a company unless and until there is demand. So only if demand for cars go up, will the steel supplier be able to supply more of steel, right? Or a carburetor supplier can supply more of these carburetors, to automobile companies only when the demand for automobiles increases. When will demand for automobiles increases? Only when people have more, when there are more number of consumers who are coming and then placing orders for cars. Correct. And when will more number of customers come? Only when they have more money, only when they have more disposable income. When will they have more disposable income? Only when their salaries rise. When will their salaries rise? Only when the economy is doing well and there are more jobs. And then everything is going really well in the economy. So the B2B market operates on derived demand, right? So I gave you examples of real estate. There's so many unsold flats. Why there are so many unsold flats is demand, because the demand in the B2C market is not picking up. So please remember, this is a very important characteristic. So in the B2B buying, demand for industrial commodities is derived. So it depends on other things, right? Only demand suppliers can supply to manufacturing or production organizations only when they place orders. When will they place orders? Only when demand for their final commodities goes up in the B2C market. So that's the first characteristic. Second is the B2B market is not very large like a B2C market. The B2C market, you have almost everybody who is a consumer. The B2B market, we are talking about only those firms in that industry. So there are very few firms in that industry. You could have just about 20 to 30 firms in an industry who manufacture these similar commodities. Right? How many car companies do you have? You can list out only about 15 to 20 car manufacturers. Then you have nobody else beyond that. So 20, and those 20 are large consumers, which means they order. Like for example, when you take Maruti as a manufacturer, so Maruti is one organization among those 10 to 12 different, car manufacturing organizations in an industry. But the volume of purchases, volume of steel or volume of all those raw materials that Maruti purchases is quite large. The purchase orders are large. That's what we mean by market characteristics. So we must understand this when we look at how B2B buying and transaction takes place. Okay, let's go to product and service characteristics. So products and services are very highly technical in B2B, and they are purchased on the basis of specifications. So these are very high precision products. All right, so the features are not like how we typically see in a B2C kind of a buying, especially, I mean, in a B2C buying also, when you're buying a computer or when you're buying a smartphone, right? Or when you're buying a television set, do you see the number of technical features, especially for electronic goods? Technical features are quite large. They're quite large, and they're very complex for you to understand. So a smartphone is a very good example. When you want to look at product specifications of your smartphone, it's very difficult because there are so many criterias and everything is so technical for you to understand. You don't understand the difference between a RAM and a ROM, and you don't understand what is a GB and so many gigahertz, and then technical features that they have about the camera, the functioning, the speed, all of that, right? So it's very complex. So B2B purchases very often are like that. So, and the criteria that they put forth is also very technical, and those are very specific, and then only those vendors who qualify to supply to those, precise specifications are the ones who are shortlisted. Second, many of the goods purchased are raw and semi-finished. So it's not a final commodity. In B2B purchases, you have suppliers or vendors who are supplying only raw materials. Like for example, when I give you an example of steel being sold to Maruti, it's only a sheet of steel. It's only a roll of steel that is sold, right? So it is raw in form. But once the steel goes into the factory, that's when the form utility is added, and that's how you finally see a car coming out. So every component that goes into the manufacturing unit is going in a raw or a semi-finished form, and then finally it comes out as a complete commodity with certain form, right? And third is heavy emphasis is placed on delivery time and technical assistance and post-sale service. So three important criteria that they're listing out and saying B2B firms would want to do business only with those suppliers who are very prompt on delivery, right? Because everything else is going to stop. The wheels of production are not going to go on, continue smoothly running if raw material supply or, when supply of raw materials don't take place on time. So delivery time is very important for suppliers. Once they make a commitment that they're going to supply within the specific time, they will have to do it. That's one thing. Secondly is, if the manufacturing firm goes through any sort of technical difficulty pertaining to that particular component, machine, or raw material, the supply team and their troubleshooting team must be ready. So those mechanics and that assistance team must be ready to quickly come and set right and sort out that issue. And then they must be available for any sort of post-sale issue that they have, and then be able to offer their services. So that's another important criteria. Now, how does the buying process go about? So technically qualified and buying professionals follow established purchasing policies and procedures. Okay, so which is the group that we are talking about when we are looking at B2B buying? Who does the purchasing here? Who is in charge and who does the purchasing here? Rohit, can you give me an answer there? Rohit, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. You're not in class. Okay, Samuel?
So yes, sir.
Yes, Samuel. That first point in the buying process, technically qualified and professional buyers follow established purchasing policies and procedures. So who is that, you know, who's the authority? Who are we targeting? If you're a supplier, who do you think is making the decision in the buying organization?
So by reading the sentence, what I understand is that the higher authorities, since they have come up with an already established brand name and tactic, they also target.
No, I just want who does it. What is the name that we give to the purchasing authority or a purchasing body?
So not sure, sir. I don't know, sir.
Yeah, Samuel, is it one individual taking the decision or a group of people taking decisions in B2B?
Sir, a group of people, sir.
Okay, so that's right. Yeah, so it is not one individual who makes a decision. It is a purchase organization, right? Purchase organization. We call this as the DMU. It's called the decision making unit. And this decision
Okay,
making
sir.
unit
Thank you, sir.
could comprise of purchase officers as well as technical people from your organization who are part of that committee, who are part of that committee or they're part of that group that's going to make the decision. So technically qualified and professional buyers, right, are going to be the decision part of the decision making unit, and they are going to make the decision on whether to accept the proposal and whether to place an order with the suppliers. So they're going to do that. That's one thing. Second is they're going to have policies and procedures. So it's not that they just pick a vendor just like that. There is a particular process, there is a particular procedure. The vendors will have to send their proposal, and they will have to send a sample, and they will have to agree upon the criteria. Sometimes what happens is in high purchase and high value buying, sometimes the representatives of the DMU will go to the suppliers unit to see the manufacturing unit for themselves, so that they are, they believe whatever that the supplier is trying to claim about themselves. So it's very important. So it's a very high risk kind of a decision that you're going to take. So the DMU definitely does that, and there is a set of procedures and policy that they follow. Especially when they go in for the bidding process, when the bidding opens, and then what is the procedure for the supply organizations to place their bids, and when will the final date till when they can place their bids, and then how the bids are going to be opened, how it is going to be declared. All of that is a very established procedure. It is not like how we do it in B2C. In B2C, we just very often, do it very unconsciously. Very often it's impulse buying, and then sometimes it is just one individual who's involved in making the decision, unless and until it is a extensive problem solving product like a flat or buying a jewelry or buying a electronic good or anything like that. So here, everything is done by professionals. They follow established set of policies and procedures. So there are multiple buying influences and multiple parties participate in the purchase decision. So which means the decision making unit also has a hierarchy, right? Which means, and they have something called a sanctioning limit. Every authority has a certain sanctioning limit, which means any purchase within about 1 lakh rupees will go to the lower hierarchy of the decision making unit, which means they can approve it. Anything that is above 1 lakh rupees, the authority cannot do it. They will have to escalate it. They will bring the matter to the higher ups, and the higher ups will have to take up the decision because it has exceeded their sanctioning capacity. right? So that's how multiple hierarchies in the decision making unit are consulted, and their opinions are taken, their advices are taken, and then based on that they make the decision. So there are reciprocal arrangements, right? So sometimes it's not a one time kind of a transaction. Sometimes the buyer and the seller transaction can go on for months together, right? After you make a proposal, it's not that the buying organization immediately responds to you and places an order, right? They will take orders, they will take proposals. We call that as RFPs. It's called the request for proposals. They will take RFPs from various suppliers or various vendors, and then they will go through all of that very critically. And then they will do their own necessary homework to find out about the company, to find out about the competitors, find out about the existing customers to whom the suppliers are selling. And then they go with several negotiations. They will ask for samples, they will request for proof, they would want to come and take a visit of the supplier's manufacturing unit and organization, and they may request for samples, they may request for demonstrations. So the negotiation process can go on for months together, because it's a very technical kind of a decision that they want to make, and they do not want to make a mistake when they do something like this. And then online buying over the internet is now widespread, but this is mostly for facilitating goods, especially for office supplies and several other commodities where the specification is not too very large, is where companies get into something like this. So finally, we're going into the marketing characteristics. So what are the kind of things that vendors can do, or what are the kind of marketing mix activities that uh, B2B companies are interested, to see what sellers are offering. So direct selling to organization buyers is the rule, and the distribution is very important. So here you don't have a very wide distribution channel. There is no big distribution channel, and very often it is direct selling. You do not have many middlemen. It will be a supplier directly contacting the manufacturer, or a supplier contacting a distributor contacting the manufacturer, the buying organization. So it's just one or two levels. So everything is very direct. There is no middleman, there are no agents, because when you have a wider distribution channel, especially in the procurement market, then too many middlemen again is like too many commissions that you will have to pay, and ultimately the price can go up, making it very difficult for the manufacturing firm to compete. Secondly, advertising and other forms of promotion are purely technical. And in this particular, in B2B, there are only two things that work. Advertising is very limited, and it will be mostly in technical or technical kind of magazines, especially related to that industry. It will be in newsletters, and very often it will be in exhibitions. So it will be through live demonstrations that they have in exhibitions or in fairs, which pertain only to products of that particular industry. So that's there. And personal selling is highly promoted. There's no other thing that works. So the technical salespeople of the supplier are the ones who will represent their organizations, and they will go and pitch, speak, make a presentation, show a demonstration. They will do everything possible over there, right? And then finally, price is often negotiated. So that bargaining power takes place. As I told you, I spoke to you something about the bargaining power, right? Who's got the bigger bargaining power? Whether the supplier is bigger and supplier has a bigger bargaining power, or whether the manufacturer is bigger than the supplier and the manufacturer has a bigger bargaining power. So it's going to be a tit for tat kind of a thing, and then the negotiation also will go on, asking them to reduce the price and here and there, and so on. So that will keep going on, and the negotiation will be on product, on dimensions, on quality, on delivery, right? And apart from the price, and then quantity discounts. So all of that is going to be very important. So the DMUs are going to be very hard at bargaining, because whichever party is going to gain on the bargaining front makes a profit there. So you must understand, if the manufacturer is able to bargain and put pressure on the suppliers, and then negotiate and bargain very hard and try to make some good benefits, all of that is going to turn out to be savings for them, and then automatically that will help them to improve their cost matrix, and then be able to offer the final commodity at a much lesser or at a much competitive price. So these characteristics are very important, and these are things that you need to understand. because these are the dynamics that's going to create that relationship between the buyer and the seller. Okay, so that's where we come to the purchase organization. So the DMU, the decision-making unit that we spoke about. So now we're going to, see what is the role of the purchasing organization. So every firm must procure materials, supplies, equipment, and services it needs to operate the business successfully. Okay, so the three type of goods that we spoke about in the previous classes. So those are the three types of goods that any supplier would want to sell or any manufacturing firm would want to buy. Okay, so if somebody could enlighten me about what are those three types of goods that are part of the B2B buying and selling.
So it is entering goods, foundation goods, and facilitating goods.
Okay, so there are three types of goods. Good. So there's something called an entry good. So what's an entry good? Let me ask. Okay, Justin Matthew, what is an entering good?
Yes, sir.
What's an entering good? What do you understand by an entering good? You know or you don't know? Entering good. Robbie?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Robbie. What do you understand by an entering good?
Sir, entering goods are raw materials
Okay.
which make to a finished good.
Okay. Okay. These are raw materials and components that actually go into the final commodity. So they actually disappear in the final commodity. That's called an entering good. So if I buy a raw material, like for example, I gave you the example of steel, right? So steel as a raw material, when it is purchased by an automobile company, gets converted into a car. So it becomes a part of the final commodity. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So what is the next type of good? Okay, Rachna K.
Yes, sir.
What is the second type of goods that are usually bought and sold?
Facilitating goods, sir.
Facilitating is the third. Okay, so you give me an answer for facilitating good. What's a facilitating good?
Um,
Facilitation. The word facilitation itself will give you the meaning of what a facilitation good is.
so facilitating good is a good. I think.
It's a good only, correct. Give me an example.
1 second, sir.
Okay, Sharad Babu.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Sharath, what is a facilitating good? Don't know.
No, sir.
Kevin?
Like
Kevin
it
Ronaldo.
is required for a certain purpose, like that.
Yeah, everything is required. All these are goods that we are buying, so everything is required. But they have a specific role. So I'm trying to understand. So if entering good is a good that enters and becomes a part of the final commodity. So what's a facilitating good? Kevin?
Like
Sir,
goods which they use in their facilities, sir.
Okay, yeah, it facilitates. Examples of
Yeah.
facilitation kind of goods. You're right.
so certain goods which are used to achieve the objectives of the company.
Every good is purchased for that only. Every good is for that purpose. All right, facilitating goods could be the goods that are required, like for example, office supplies or lubricants. These are not part of the final commodity, but it only facilitates, right? So those are, it aids the process. Like for example, you buy lubricant, you buy oil, you buy grease, then you buy a lot of office stationery, all of these administration expenses, all of these are facilitation. It only aids the manufacturing process, but none of this will become a part of the final commodity. And what is the third type of good? Okay, what's the third type of good? So you said entering good and then we have facilitating. Okay. Harish?
Yes, sir.
What's what's the third type of good, Harish?
Sir, it's foundation good.
Okay, so what's a foundation good?
Sir, they are basically assets like
Okay,
office, machineries.
machinery, land and building. All right, good
Yes, sir.
example. Okay, so these are the three categories. So you will have vendors supplying one of these. You could have vendors who supply entering goods, vendors for facilitation goods, vendors for foundation goods, right? So here for a purchase organization, all the three things are very important, but the importance that they attach to these goods is varying. Certain goods are of least importance, certain goods are of most high importance. Okay, so spending on purchased goods and services can represent 70% of a company's cost. So business leaders have long known that purchasing improvements can directly improve the bottom line, which means that smart buying that we very often think about, right? So when you as a customer, when you go into a market and you want to buy certain goods for yourself, you're always looking at value for money. Simple understanding, you want more, you want to buy more at less money by spending less money. So the same thing that same logic is what is applied by the DMUs or the purchasing organization, because 70% of the money that they spend is on the cost of raw materials. So we call that as the cost of production. So in fact, 70% of your maximum retail price that you pay for a good, 70% of it is cost of production, and mostly for all those entering and the facilitation and the foundation goods that we are taking for making the commodity. So in economics, you would have studied about variable cost. 70% of the variable cost in making a unit of a commodity comes from the money that we spend in purchasing raw materials and all of these input factors. So if you bargain very hard, if you negotiate very hard with your suppliers, and then if you tend to try to bring that cost down, so from that 70%, if it comes down to maybe around 65%, let's say. So earlier it was 70% of the of the MRP. Now it is 65% of the MRP. So that 5% that you have reduced in terms of cost because of your efficiency in purchasing, because of your superior bargaining and negotiation skills, that 5% is a saving. So that 5% you can either transfer to the customer on the price of a commodity, give them a 5% discount. So obviously, the more number of customers will come and buy from you because your price is 5% cheaper than rest of the others. Or you could also save that and keep that as a saving so that you could use that at some other point of time. So that's what we talk about as bottom line. Bottom line is nothing but profits. When every rupee that you are going to save in this entire process of procurement, so is a money that you will save. So when you go back and see value chain model of Michael Porter, procurement is a very important activity. So the purchases that we make, the cost that we pay for the raw materials, the cost that we pay for input factors, machinery, equipment, and then how well we are efficiently able to do that. When you reduce the cost of production, automatically there's going to be a big reduction in the price. So that is what the DMU or the purchasing organization is very focusedly looking at, trying to ensure that they make every purchase and every purchase is a value purchase. Okay, right. So how goods and services are purchased depends on the following factors. The nature of the business, right? So the nature of the business and the nature of the product, what is the type of product or service that I am manufacturing and selling, is what is going to determine how important this particular supply is for me. So whether I say it's highly important or whether it's least important depends on what business I am in, and then uh, what is the product I am manufacturing and selling. The second important aspect is the size of the firm. You could have a small size organization, we call that as an SME, small and medium scaled unit, or you could have a mid-size manufacturing firm, or you could be a large manufacturing organization, or you could be a multinational corporation. So the size also is going to vary, because the size is what's going to determine your bargaining power. If you're a micro unit, if you're a small unit, if you're a medium sized unit, your bargaining power before a supplier is generally small. So you have less bargaining power. Supplier has a bigger bargaining power. If you're a mid-size organization and the supplier is a small supplier, then automatically the bargaining power is with you and the supplier has lesser bargaining power. But if you're a large scale organization, right, and if you have many small and medium sized suppliers or vendors, then you have a bigger bargaining power, because it is the suppliers who need you and you don't need the suppliers. Now, which means there are more suppliers. You can always buy from anybody, right? So, but for the supplier, when they supply to a big organization, the volume of business is huge. The orders that a big organization is going to place, with the supplier is going to be very large. So you don't want to lose out on that business. Instead of trying to target and sell multiple small businesses, it's wise enough for you to pick up just one or two big businesses and supply throughout the year to only those two companies. You don't have to do anything more. Third, volume. So when you target big organizations, as I said, the purchase orders are going to be big. The purchase tickets are going to be big. So automatically you will supply in large volume and large quantity. So you make a good, bargain out of it. And fourthly, companies are also looking at variety. They want to go to suppliers who generally give them most of the things that they are looking at. Simple example, why do we go to a supermarket? Why do we go to a huge hypermarket? Is because we get everything in one place. It offers a lot of variety, everything, and also in every unit you have several choices that you can always make from various brands, and then you pick up. So same logic also gets applied to a buying organization, because they want to always look at suppliers who have a more variety, distributors who are able to bring in distribution supplies of several organizations. And then the last criteria that they look for is technical complexity, right? Technical specification on one side, and then if the component that they are buying is of a technically complex nature, then they would want to do business only with those vendors who understand the technical complexity and who are able to make such products of high precision with not much of issues or problems when that particular component is purchased and then when it enters a final commodity. So goods and services are purchased on several criteria like this. So, the purchase organization is often going to make a look at this. What is the nature of business? How big is the supplier? What is the volume that they can supply to us? Whether they have variety and whether they will be able to match the technical complexity and requirements of my organization. So all of these are criteria that they keep in mind when they do vendor analysis. So what are the goals of purchasing? Yeah, these are a few points again, that you can add up to that list of trying to see what are the various things the decision making unit or the purchasing organization is going to look for when they're going to be looking at suppliers. First thing I told you is delivery schedules are very important. So which is uninterrupted flow of materials. Once we identify a supplier or a vendor and we place an order, and then we want these raw materials and supplies to come and reach us at a specific point of time, it must be done at that point of time, because we're looking at a very highly complex supply chain. And it's just not just one supplier that we are waiting for, right? So you have multiple suppliers, and multiple suppliers supply multiple types and varieties of input factors. Even if one supplier misses out on supplying at the right time, even if you have about all the 9 items on 10, and if one particular item is not supplied on time, you can't do anything with the 9 items as such. So that's why it's very important that you need to always have dependable and reliable suppliers. So first criteria is that uninterrupted flow of materials. So the first question that they will ask these suppliers is, will you be able to supply in the volume and at the time and at the quantity that we want, right? So they have to prove that in their presentation, show that track record and how they will be able to supply. So that's one thing. Second thing is, as I said, in the B2B buying, in the B2B market, the process is based on derived demand. So sometimes demand fluctuates, right? Sometimes demand fluctuates during certain quarters or certain periods. So suddenly if there is an increase in demand and the company needs to manufacture more units, and if they would want to satisfy that demand in the market and they want to supply, so automatically they're going to place more orders. So the question is, will the suppliers be able to match that particular extra orders that the company is offering? Will they be able to do that? Do they have the resources? Do they have the capacity? Do they have the capability? Is what we're going to look at. That's one thing. So uninterrupted flow of materials is what the DMU or the purchasing organization is going to look at. Secondly is managing inventory. Now, as we say, inventory management is one of those very efficient techniques where we can bring down cost. All of us understand. So no organization or no factory would want to have a big inventory. They do not want to have stocks of a high level because all that is going to add up cost for them. So money gets blocked in inventory. So they would want to do business only with those suppliers who can supply on time, and the manufacturing organization can manage with minimal inventory, which costs them very less or very low. And as I said, companies are also looking at zero inventory or just-in-time inventory techniques, where the company does not have inventory and the raw materials flow in at the time when when the organization wants. So they would want to do business with those kind of suppliers who already have just-in-time kind of an inventory technique and operate on zero inventory. So that's a good thing for us. But otherwise, companies are okay doing with minimal inventory, but they would want suppliers to make sure that they supply on time. Third important aspect is quality, of course. Maintaining and improving quality, ensuring that the quality is consistent, not just in one batch of supplies, but in all the batch of raw materials that go into the entering good or foundation goods. Everything must be of the same quality, and it must be consistent enough. That's where we look at Six Sigma qualities parameters. And if a supplier has Six Sigma quality parameters, and if they have certifications from various certifying agencies that give them that quality credit and accreditation, that's fantastic, because it helps a manufacturer to make to choose that supplier and have a good relationship. So developing and managing supplier relationship. The fourth aspect is very important, because it's a buying process. Very often it's a continuous transaction. So we need to keep in touch. And then the buyer and the supplier, buyer and the seller will have to be on a good relationship. So that's the topic that we're going to take up after this. This is called, that's called supplier, managing supplier relationship in B2B. So building that good trust, building that relationship, ensuring that we have suppliers who are competent, ensuring that we have suppliers that we can always depend upon, we can always rely upon, even if we have new product plans. The suppliers will always back us up in whatever we do, because a business can flourish only if your suppliers and the supply chain are in support with you. They should support you and help you in whatever goals you would want to achieve. Achieving total lowest or total cost. So here we are looking at the objective of the purchasing organization is to ensure that the total cost of production is the lowest. So that total cost of production or the total landed cost can automatically come down only if we have a very good supply chain that has very efficient suppliers and who can supply at the to the criteria and to all that is the requirement of the organization is very important. And reducing administrative cost. If you remember, when we do inventory, we talk about something called ordering cost. Ordering cost is basically nothing but an administrative cost. But if you have a very efficient supplier, and if they are able to do everything without you requesting or without you doing all the necessary processes. So if they are there, the moment you think of them and the moment you expect certain deliveries and orders, the supplier is ready to support you, back you up, and then give that inventory that you require. So if there is a big reduction in administrative cost, automatically the goals of purchasing are achieved, and then both the buying firm as well as the supplier can be on a win-win kind of a position. Okay, last point. So last thing is very important. So no organization is going to stay in the business and then continue making the same kind of products and serving to the same kind of customers. Every organization wants to grow. So they have big strategic plans, and they have big plans of new product processes, new product development, reaching out to newer customers, increasing their product lines and offering high quality commodities. All of that is going to be there. So as I said, they're all competing very strongly and very closely with the other firms in the industry. So naturally, only if the firms are able to back them up and help the organization to achieve its new product development processes and all the strategic processes in the future. And then as the company's new product also gets developed, the suppliers are also going to develop their supply competencies and resources and then be able to offer. Then that's when everybody can go hand in hand, and the entire supply chain can see the benefits or reap the benefits when the product becomes a great success. So the DMU and the purchasing organization is going to look at all of this. It's not just a short-term, one-time transaction that we buy a component and then we are done with it. This is something that, as I said, the buying organization would want to establish a relationship, and they want that relationship to be long-term. They don't want to keep changing vendors at every quarter or in every year. They want to ensure that once they've done and finalized with suppliers, they would stick with that supply chain. Everything will run very smoothly. Only then the firm can concentrate on other things and not break their heads too much, just with the purchasing and just trying to do sorting out issues with the vendor. So that's where these things are very important. So if suppliers are able to match these requirements, and then if these expectations are fulfilled by the suppliers, then that's when you see a perfect relationship, and that entire transaction can go on well. Okay, so that's what the decision making unit or the purchasing organization is going to look for. Okay, so I'm going to stop with this for today. So when we come back, we will look at what are the types of purchasing and what are the kind of other modalities that the organization will go into. So we will look at all of those technical things when we come back for the next class. Okay, so any questions that you have, anything that you'd want to ask me?
No, sir.
Okay, then, yeah, fine. All right, the 3 people that I called during the lecture and I did not find any response and anything from them, so are going to be marked absent. And please make sure, because the first 10-15 minutes, I had so many people entering. So again, I'm requesting all of you to be there on time. Please make sure that you join the class on time, because the first 10-15 minutes, if that tinging noise is there, and then if each one of you keep entering, then it makes it very difficult, for me. Okay, so please come join on time, and please participate in the class. When I'm going to ask you questions, if you don't answer, you'll be marked absent. Okay, so things are things are clear. Okay, then, thank you so much, and we will meet in the next class.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.